Greetings. Good afternoon, good morning, anytime you are accessing this video. Very happy to be able to share some tips around building healthy routines and building routines in general with everybody. My name is Jagmeet, and I am the Senior Regional Director at Gateway Learning Group, and our agency provides ABA services to children in home as well as districts. We're really happy to be a part of this resource fair and helping to contribute in any which way possible. And we're really looking forward to connect with everyone that attends this talk. And if you have additional questions, we'd be happy to answer those as well. All right, so let's dive in to our presentation here. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about building healthy routines, and this is really one of my most favorite subjects and topics to discuss, because I think that oftentimes when families, parents, and when we're struggling, when we're juggling with things, when we're just looking for that one thing to do that's going to help us, and that one magic stick and that one strategy, routines is really that piece. It's so powerful. It's so powerful to bring yourself as a parent into a routine that works for you. And it's so powerful for kids and for our children to be able to follow a routine that they are getting a lot of reinforcement through. They're feeling on track. They're having, they have self-monitoring systems and different ways that we can get them engaged and excited about getting involved in that routine. We know that children that acquire independence early in life have more potential to thrive in both domestic and vocational settings. And we know that gains in daily living skills predict decrease in parent stress. And parents with children who are more self-sufficient had decreased stress overall. So again, a lot of research points to having these routines, being able to streamline and being able to help support a daily living pattern or a habit that is going to help all the members of the home. We also know that children with developmental disabilities will gain daily living skills over time, but they may do so at a slower rate than typically developing peers. So in today's agenda, we'll talk about creating and following new routines. We'll talk about using schedules and checklists. And then we'll also talk about self-monitoring systems. Before we dive in, I also, as much as I say this is going to be so powerful and so magical, I also want everyone to practice self-compassion, because creating a routine is going to require a lot of energy and a lot of reminders, a lot of consistency, and a lot of discipline in being able to sticking to that routine. And when we approach this with self-compassion and we understand that there will be days where, we are exhausted to follow that routine or something didn't work out, it's okay. And we can follow that routine the following day. And so really take this approach in being able to be compassionate towards yourself, towards your child, towards the entire family unit, and allowing people within your home to be able to skip a day and to not follow for a day, but really maintaining that energy around how can we keep this consistent, because the consistency factor is going to be key. But at the same time, we also understand there's a lot that parents are juggling. So how can we kind of build this in so that it's creating less stress to be able to follow than more stress if you are not able to follow it. So you probably want to start with creating and following a new routine. So if you don't currently have a routine that you're following, this first section here may help you think about and visualize what is it that you need to build in your day. Households that have structured routines tend to have fewer challenges with transition between activities. So we'll talk a lot about this, because if everyone in the home, if the children know what's happening next, there's less of that resistance and that transition becomes a little bit smoother. There's fewer challenges with non-compliance. And so there's just a lot more compliance in being able to accept, yes, this is an activity that I don't want to do, but it is on my schedule next. And therefore, I've been exposed to this for many days, many weeks, many months now within our routine. And this is something that I just need to check off the list pretty much in order to have access to my next activity. Children being able to entertain themselves. Um, I think our children have built so much resilience over this year of 2020 and as we enter into 2021. But being able to entertain themselves is still a challenge for all of us, really. And so if we're looking at young children, if we're looking at maybe we have siblings in the home, maybe we have a child that doesn't have some activities that they're playing very independently with, a routine can help introduce that time to them. And so if we can identify this is a time where we're playing alone or we're playing with these three items, over time a child is able to pick up on that pattern and that habit there. Keeping the household clean and tidy. This is my favorite because there's never enough hours in the day to actually do this. But actually building in time within your routine to just pick up what the activity that you had. And before you move on to the next activity, make sure things are put away and make sure that they're tidy. And getting children involved in that part of the routine is so critical because it, again, is building their ability to have that independence long term. And it's a wonderful way to also fill in the routine. So what are you doing from 9:45 to 10 a.m.? Well, maybe we're just putting things away right now for that 10-minute, 15-minute block. Excuse me. Sibling rivalry or arguments. So we just touched on this. And so, we can certainly build in time where there are times in the day where they play together and there's an activity that's identified, or maybe there's an activity that they both really enjoy playing and they have independent times that they play with that iPad or that board game or any activity around that. And then lastly, power struggles. We can't argue with a routine. We can't argue with that visual schedule. So it definitely limits those power struggles and being able to really have it laid out and, be able to flow and have that more smooth kind of, schedule in terms of what is happening next. And that can eliminate some of that power struggle. And again, non-compliance and resistance to transition overall. Routines can help create predictability. So we talked a little bit about this. If you as a parent, if your child knows what is going to happen next, that's incredibly helpful. And many, many times we're, especially now in this position, we actually don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But if we have some sort of sense of predictability and if we have something that's a little bit more familiar, that's established for us, it can certainly help to regulate those ups and downs and help to kind of stay stable in the sense of this is something we can hold on to. This is my routine. This is what I do every day. It creates something a little bit more regular. So instead of every day, starting the day and not knowing what's going to happen, but maybe you already had the routine that's, maybe it's changing every day, but maybe you set the new routine at nighttime. So that way in the morning, there is a regular flow. There's a regular expectation of how the day is going to go. This routines bring about a great amount of security to children. This is certainly something that, with all of the disruption that was caused last year, not being able to go to school, see friends, see family, creating a routine, no matter whether you did it already or whether you're going to start for the first time or whether you're introducing a new routine for your family, it can certainly create security. It creates responsibility because you have your child involved. You have your child doing these activities with you and cooperation. So again, everyone in the family unit is working together. And pausing there, talking about modeling is going to be a really big component on how to create these healthy routines and how to show that cooperation, how to show your child that this is something that you're doing for yourself as well as encouraging your child. Many of us rely on a Google Calendar or any sort of calendar to tell us what's even going to happen in our day. Without that, many of us would be lost. And that's kind of our routine. We know that we need to stick to our calendar. We need to know what's happening today, in the next hour, or next week. And that's very similar. And, being able to generalize that to a child's world and say, this is the routine that you're following. These are the activities or the tasks that we have listed that, the child is going to be following. When we talk a little bit about, the visual checklist, I'll touch on this a little bit more. But again, that reminder of having you as a parent and others in the home or in that family unit being also able to take part in the daily living routine is going to be so powerful. It's such a fun way to have this exercise of we're all working off a schedule. It's not just one child in the home or only the children in the home, but if everybody has a routine that they're following and it's visually available to everyone to see, and at the end of the night you are giving yourself a star for following that routine and staying on track, or maybe you're giving yourself a different type of face, happy face or sad face. If you missed a couple days and that's totally fine, you're going to get back on it. It's a great way to model that behavior and get your child to cooperate, get them to be responsible and accountable in their own routine, and get them excited and really, really get that buy-in from them. And maybe there's days where your children follow the routine, but you didn't. And it's a great way to have those conversations of what is it that they're doing and how they became successful within that. So this next portion, we'll talk about using schedules and checklists. So just different ways that you can set up routines in your home. And I always like to preface this by saying, do what's easy for you and do what's going to be less stress. And for some people, creating something very fancy and very visually appealing is less stress because it's really fun to do those things too. And for some people, just writing this on a whiteboard or a piece of paper is easy. So find that medium, and then you can always change it. You start off one way and then you change it to another way, and then discover what's going to be easy for you and for your family. So you probably want to identify activities. You want to certainly build in what is the school day, the homeschool day that you're really looking to target. And so, if your child is really struggling with a certain subject, where in that day can you place that activity? And we'll talk about kind of creating that schedule. What are the other activities that are really important for you and your family? There's a lot of buzz right now around mindfulness and how to incorporate mindfulness within your daily routines. That might be something that if you never really had time to build in, maybe you set aside 5 minutes for that. Maybe again, there's an opportunity for your child to help you, do a cleanup in the home and build that skill out. Maybe you're really working on sibling interaction and working on appropriate communication with their siblings or appropriate playtime. Well, then you can build that into the routine. All of these things that we typically in our busy day are unable to identify time for, or if maybe there's something that we really want our child to work on and we aren't able to figure out where in the day that's going to happen, routines can help you do that. Because when you're listing these out, you really want to prioritize what are the key activities and start small. Maybe you only want 1 or 2 key activities identified here, and then you can build on that. Identify time blocks. So from 8 in the morning until 9 o'clock, what's happening? What's everyone in your home doing? Maybe the class online school has already started. Maybe for some children, school hasn't started yet. So maybe they can be engaging something similar to learning. So maybe it's just altogether learning time in the home, quiet time. Maybe it's outdoor walk time. Maybe that's a great time for you and your family to be outside and get some fresh air early in the morning. So whatever works for your family in terms of how you want to create these time blocks, and try to build them so that way there is some sort of overlap or alignment, and if whenever possible, when everyone in the home is doing something similar. So for example, if you have really important meetings at a certain time, and if you're working from home and your child has, certain classes that they need to really focus on, but then you have somebody else that's, doing something that's really loud or disruptive. Maybe you want to change that routine. Maybe you can block off these times for, at this time of day, we have quiet time or we have focus time. So how can you create those time blocks that's going to allow you, your family, and your child to be able to thrive within that? Creating a visual schedule. There's actually a lot of examples that we'll talk about, but again, whatever is easy. And there's so many things online that you can print, some really, really wonderful resources. So I would definitely encourage you to go online and see, what's something that you can just maybe print, cut, and get your child involved, because we don't want to present this to the child of, hey, this is your new routine, this is what you're doing. But instead, you want to get them excited. Tomorrow is Monday, and we want to do something really fun together. And we want to build a new routine. How can we do this together? What are some of the things that you really enjoy doing? Well, let's find pictures about those. Let's draw those pictures and put them together in a visual schedule. And explain and teach the children the schedule and what the purpose of this really is. Because just by posting this up and just by saying, hey, we have this new routine, we're going to follow it, you're not going to get that buy-in immediately. But the more you do it and the more you rely on it, and the more you fall back to it, the more this becomes a regular point of contact and something more familiar for your child. So again, be involved, create your own schedule, model the behavior, get your child excited, get them to identify activities that they want to see in their schedule. They have to do learning time, which is not so preferred, but right after that, they get to go play basketball, which is really preferred. And then they have to, play with your sibling. Maybe that's not preferred. And then right after that, they can play with the iPad. That's really preferred. So disperse them in a way that they're excited and they know that something that they've picked, that's something that they're motivated by, is going to be coming up next after they do this one task that they don't really want to do. So again, we talked a little bit about this. What are the most important activities for your child and for your family? And so how can you incorporate those academics? How can you incorporate those areas that really need your focus or your child's focus? And maybe that's something that if you're working with a service provider, you can consult them. If you're working with your school, consulting them of, is there an area that as a parent, I can build into my schedule to say, this is a time where I really need to help my child. This is something we need to focus on. And then these are some other academic or subjects that maybe my child is doing a little bit more independently, and they can be successful at that level. Self-help and chores, my favorite, because again, if you have it in a routine, they just have to do it, right? Again, maybe not the first, second, or the first, 20 times, but eventually, the more this routine is presented and relied on and motivating and has things that they like, the more likely they're going to be able to follow this. And if that self-help, starts with, all you need to do right now is pick up your clothes and take them inside. Well, great, that's easy. They can do that. And then over time, once you see a little bit more independence, once you see a little bit more buy-in, maybe it's picking up the clothes, taking them inside, putting them in the laundry basket, and taking the laundry basket out, and putting it in the machine. So build on that, but start really, really small, especially with the non-preferred things. It's a great way to teach your child again that they have the ability to do this and they can do this. And for you to, be able to model it for them, for you to give the right levels of prompts to the child and be able to get them to be successful, for them to really thrive and build on that skill. Outdoor time, again, right now, whenever possible, I would really encourage all of us to be outdoors. I find myself, if I don't put it in a routine, I'm indoors all day long, and not just indoors, but maybe I'm just sitting, or maybe I'm just doing one activity on repeat. So really identifying time that we can identify activities for ourselves to maintain that health and get that fresh air, be outside, and encourage that for all of our kids. Family activities. Now, if this is something that you're working on and you want the family to be doing activities, whether it's just sitting and having conversation, at the dinner table, maybe you're working on trying different foods or novel foods because your child is not eating different types of foods. Well, this is a great time to identify that in the routine of, at 5 p.m., we sit at the table and we try one thing new before we eat, our meal. So definitely talk to any of your service providers if you have ABA services or other providers that you're working with on some of these goals. But how can you incorporate those goals within your routine to really capture more learning opportunities through the day to day? Same with individual activities, preferred activities, free time, all of it. You could just put everything in a routine, in a daily routine or a daily schedule, so a child knows that they have access to these different activities. So when we're thinking again about brainstorming routines, you can also take the approach of, what that time of day looks like. So for example, if you are packing your snack, well, what does that really look like? Does your child know where these items are that they are able to have access to? During bedtime, do they have a small mini list of activities that they need to complete during bedtime? Leaving the home, all of these things that you are going to do, or the best right now is logging on to class. It's not so much of just opening the computer, but making sure that you have your materials. And so maybe having the list written out for your child of, before you log on to your virtual learning, these are the 3 things that you need to have with you. And maybe if they have those 3 things and they're good to go, encourage them to give themselves a star, give themselves a smiley face. Maybe they just check it off their list for that day. And you would be surprised of how reinforcing that can be. And it's reinforcing for us when we're prepared for, an activity, a meeting, anything that we're going to do. It feels good, and it feels even better when we're able to check it off that list. And so get them, expose them to that practice of how they are writing those lists. Maybe you start writing the list for them, and eventually getting them to identify those items and be independent. Identify time blocks that work for you and your child. So really consider, how long can your child attend to an activity without supervision? Especially if you are going to be asking them to do something independent. And if you say, I want you to do this for 15 minutes, but really they can only independently, attend to that for 5 minutes. Well, we really want to be able to, for them to be successful. And we don't want this to turn into, you are now diverting your attention to something else for 15 minutes for that time, but then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, your child needs your help and becoming more disruptive. So really consider, how long are they already attending to that activity? And then if it's only 5 minutes, maybe you start with 5 minutes, maybe start with 6 minutes, and then you can slowly build out. How long are they typically expected to remain on task at school? This is a really big one. So I would highly encourage you to talk to your teachers and really create this plan with the teacher of, what is realistic in terms of academic time? What is realistic in terms of learning time, engagement time? Because even throughout the school day, there's a recess break, there's a lunch break, there's transition time. So what is realistic in terms of how long they should actually just be sitting and attending to an assignment? And are the time blocks for each activity realistic? So taking a look at that, because once you create this routine, you can still go back and change it. And maybe you get buy-in from your child. Maybe you ask them, do you like this? Is this something that you can do? You observe them. You observe, wait a minute, for the last 5 days, my child is not able to engage in this activity in the routine. This is something I need to change or edit for them. Identify motivators, what's in it for your child. Making sure that tangible reinforcers are available for completing the task. Tangible reinforcers mean something that they have actual access to. Their favorite toy, their favorite games, something that they're going to be able to do right after they do something that they don't really want to do. Again, talking about preferred activities, to follow a non-preferred activity. So making sure that the day is flowing in a way that, you don't want to have three things lined up that they don't really want to do at all. And they can see that. They can see it on the visual schedule of, I don't want to do these next three activities. So therefore, I'm just going to have a lot of non-compliance, or, worse, and some maladaptive behaviors or anything else that's kind of to follow. So set them up for success. Let them see that there's going to be something that they don't like to do, but immediately after, it's something that they've selected, something that's motivating, reinforcing, something that they do want to engage in. So which form works for your child? Now, if your child is not yet reading, you can probably use some pictures. I do have some examples I'll show in a little bit. You can print out pictures from the internet. You can draw stick figures, anything that works and it resembles, the activity that you want your child to engage in. The purpose is that the child knows what that activity is. So for example, if you're going to go outside, maybe you just draw a sun, and that represents to the child, okay, we're going outside. So in any which way that you can create this, that's easy for you and for your child, to kind of get it off the ground, that's what I would encourage. You can have a written schedule, and then you can also have what's called an object schedule. An object schedule is if it's time to eat, maybe you have a spoon that's pasted onto the schedule with some Velcro. If it's time for learning, you have a pencil that's pasted on. So it's really just an object that represents what activity is coming next. So that way they can really reference that and take a look. It should be displayed in a central area that's easily accessible. So again, if everyone in the home, the family unit, you, the adults, the child, if everyone is working out this schedule, it should be easily accessible. Everyone can have their own schedule, but it's such a great way to encourage one another, be able to, have it, whether it's in the kitchen, in the family room, anywhere that's open and available. And so folks can reference this, they can see this, and you can refer back to it and see if you're on track, what activity you need to do next, and make sure that, again, it's reinforcing the fact of, I have something fun lined up for the next hour after I complete this activity. Don't expect anyone, including yourself, to follow this independently right away. So again, that's where that self-compassion piece really comes in, because it's so exciting to write schedules. I feel it's so exciting to write schedules, starting fresh, getting new ideas, getting your child's buy-in. But it's going to take time, and it takes time for everyone to build out new habits. And so really the key here is that consistency piece. If you stick to it, if you're able to refer to it regularly, this will become a part of that daily routine. Explain each step and activity and the rules. So you probably want to go through each portion of this and make sure that the child knows what activity it is. And so you don't want this to be rolled out and the child has no idea what learning time actually means. So really identify, when we're doing learning time, you're either engaging in the distance learning, or you're reading, or you're coloring, or you're doing something from this bucket of activities. Prompt and reinforce completion. So it's okay to prompt. It's okay to set reminders. We all have reminders, again, on our Google calendars, on our phones, on our alarms. We all depend on reminders and prompts, and that's completely fine. So maybe you can, set together an alarm or a reminder for your child to be able to stay on track. Teach self-monitoring. So child should be able to cross off or check off once a task is complete. And I have an entire section, I'll talk about self-monitoring a little bit more. And then reinforce following the schedule. This is the biggest piece, because if we want a behavior to happen again, we must reinforce it. We must identify specifically what it is that we liked in that behavior. And so if you really want your child to be successful in following that routine, every time they're looking at that routine, or every time they're, checking it off as a self-monitoring system, reinforce that. Give them some praise. I really like how you're referencing your calendar. I love how you stayed on track with your schedule. You're doing such a wonderful job, monitoring your progress. So any of these little things and any which way that you can praise is going to go a long way. So here are some examples. You can just print this out. You can use icons. This is on Velcro. You can just write it on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard. So anything that really works for you. So the last section that I have here is all about self-monitoring tools, and we'll talk about a couple of different tools that we have. Self-monitoring tools builds independence and accountability for your own behavior. So your child is in charge of their own behavior. It increases participation in designing their own behavior management program. And it promotes generalization of skill. And that's really key because you can actually create a self-monitoring tool for other behaviors as well. So it's really a wonderful tool to be able to expose to your child, get them to practice and implement. Couple of components is to identify the target behavior to monitor. So if we're talking about just following a routine, that's a target behavior there. Determine how often the behavior is going to be monitored. So do they just need to, at the end of the day, give themselves a star or cross it out, or are you expecting them to look at the routine multiple times a day? So giving that information, making that clear, finding out what's going to be best for you and for your child will be a really wonderful way for your child to know when they are accountable for, when they're responsible for following up. And gain buy-in from the child to implement the plan. Absolutely key point. You want to keep your child excited. You want to let them know that they're in the driver's seat. They're the one that's creating this plan. So that way, this can help them do more things that they like to do. And also help them, very quickly get the things that they don't want to do and even continue to get better at that. So it might look like this. Again, this is something that I found on Google. So if you just type in self-monitoring checklist, you will get tons of different examples. This might be something that, a child prints out and they can actually, cut and paste and then be able to check off the activities that they're monitoring for themselves. Or again, they can just write this on a piece of paper. Another tool is a behavior contract. And so what this is, it provides clear defined rules for consequences of behavior. So if I do complete my routine, this is what happens. If I don't complete my routine, this is what happens. It increases accountability to engage in appropriate behavior. And it allows parents, teachers, and child to work towards a mutual goal. So the behavior contracts are a really fantastic way to incorporate multiple stakeholders. So your service providers, your teachers, parents, the child, everyone working together in collaboration to be able to build an actual contract. So a contract might look like this. Sorry that this is coming out a little bit fuzzy, but you have a goal that you've identified up here of, my child is agreeing to this. When the goal is reached, this is what he or she will earn. And then it's signed. And then there's also consequences. If this goal is not reached, what's going to happen? So the major components here are, again, what are you working for? What is the child going to agree to do? What are the privileges that are earned? What are the consequences? And my favorite part of the behavior contract is the signature. Because making it official, getting that buy-in, getting the child to really exercise in this ability to, again, identify what's important for themselves and how they're going to monitor that and how they're going to track that is such a phenomenal way to kind of get that off the ground. Awesome. So that is all that I have for today in terms of building healthy routines. Again, my name is Jagmeet, and I am a Senior and Regional Director at Gateway Learning Group. We host many of these webinars, and so if you are ever interested in learning more about our services, about this topic particularly, or about any other information, you can absolutely email us or call us at this number and contact. We also are really excited to be a part of this resource fair with the Tri-Valley SELPA, and really look forward to meeting many of you that may have additional questions or that we can support in any additional way. Thank you so much. All the best.